All right, folks, buckle up. We're diving deep into some seriously murky waters today, land deals in Guyana. And let me tell you, these deals have ignited a political firestorm, accusations flying left and right.
Yeah, Guyana, they're on the verge of this massive economic shift, right? Oil discoveries, boom, suddenly there's all this wealth and investment pouring in. It's exciting, but it also opens the door for, well, let's just say some less than savory practices. And these land deals, they seem to be right at the heart of it.
Exactly. And what's really wild is that it's not just one side crying foul. We've got both the ruling party, the PPP, and the opposition, the AFC, lobbing accusations back and forth.
Right, and it's all happening during an election year, no less. So the stakes, they couldn't be higher. Each side's trying to paint themselves as the good guys, the champions of transparency, while simultaneously trying to take the other down.
Classic political maneuvering. Okay, so who are the key players in this saga?
Well, you've got Nandlall. He's Guyana's attorney general, big wig in the PPP. He's the one who's really come out swinging, aiming his sights directly at Nigel Hughes, the leader of the AFC.
So Nandlall's basically trying to make Hughes look like a hypocrite when it comes to these land deals.
Precisely. You see, Hughes had called for a freeze on all land transactions during the election year, to ensure everything's above board, prevent any shady dealings. But Nandlall's comeback is essentially, hold on a minute, Hughes. Your own party was in power not so long ago, and you weren't exactly squeaky clean yourself.
Ooh, that's got a sting. So what kind of deals are we talking about here? Give us the dirt.
Well, one of the main accusations revolves around a piece of prime real estate in Ogle. It's right near ExxonMobil's headquarters, so you know it's valuable. Hughes initially claimed that someone got their hands on over 30 acres there for a ridiculously low price, like 30 million Guyanese dollars per acre.
Wow, that does sound like a steal, especially with ExxonMobil right there.
Right, and Hughes was using this as an example of the PPP's supposed corruption. But then Nandlall comes back with a bombshell, reveals documents showing it was actually Hughes's own government who set that price when they were selling off land in Ogle.
So Hughes is criticizing a price that his own party put in place.
Yeah.
That's a little awkward, wouldn't you say?
Awkward, yeah, definitely. Hypocritical even. But Nandlall didn't stop there. He went on to spill the tea about some of the deals made by Hughes's party, and it's not pretty.
Spill it. We're all ears. What did Nandlall uncover?
Oh, just little things like buyers not actually paying the full amount for their land. Some paid a fraction of the price, others didn't pay a dime, and yet they still got the titles.
Hold on, so they're getting free land. That's outrageous.
Yeah, and it gets even worse. Turns out the surveying was so shoddy in some cases that the plots were completely inaccessible. Like you'd have to trespass on someone else's property just to get to your own.
What a mess.
Total chaos. And Nandlall's point was that these deals were rushed, poorly planned, and lacked any kind of proper oversight. Just a recipe for disaster.
Okay, so we've got questionable pricing, people not paying, and land they can't even access, all happening under Hughes's watch. But here's the real kicker, right? A lot of these deals happened after Hughes's party lost that no confidence vote back in December 2018.
Bingo. And for those who need a refresher, that no confidence vote essentially meant the government lost the support of the majority in parliament. So they're technically a caretaker government until the next election.
Right. So Nandlall is saying they were making these major land deals even when they were essentially lame ducks.
Exactly. And his argument is that a caretaker government shouldn't be making those kinds of decisions. It could tie the hands of the new administration. It's just not kosher.
So there's a pattern emerging here, right? These accusations, whether true or not, point to a lack of transparency and accountability. It's worrying, to say the least.
No doubt. And remember, this is all happening as Guyana's swimming in oil money, so the potential for corruption, it's through the roof.
Okay, so we've set the stage, laid out the accusations, and established that this whole thing is a bit of a mess. But Nandlall didn't stop there. He went on to accuse Hughes of personally benefiting from some sweetheart deals, like getting discounts that no one else got. Expert, tell us more about these personal allegations against Hughes.
Okay, so there are two deals that Nandlall really zeroed in on. The first involves a 20-acre plot in Ogle. This plot was bought by a company where, surprise, surprise, Hughes was a director and company secretary, and they got it for 26 million Guyanese dollars per acre. Remember that 30 million price tag that Hughes was so up in arms about?
So you got a discount. How convenient.
Right. It certainly raises some eyebrows. And of course, this deal went down while Hughes' party was still in power.
And the other deal, what was that about?
Oh, this one's even juicier. It involves a 10-acre plot in LBI. Now, this is a prime residential area. And this plot was snapped up for a measly 10 million Guyanese dollars per acre. And get this, the deal closed in March 2020, which was after the election that Hughes's party lost.
Wait, so he's closing deals even after they're out of power. This is getting more and more twisted.
It is. And Nandlall's using these examples to paint Hughes as, well, a hypocrite, calling out land deals while allegedly profiting from them himself.
Okay, so we've got these allegedly shady deals under Hughes's party, and then we've got Hughes allegedly getting in on the action himself. But there's one more piece of this puzzle that we haven't touched on yet, and it involves a jungle. Expert, remind us about this infamous 75 acres of jungle deal.
Yes. This is where things get really wild.
Now, before we go any further, I just want to remind our listeners why we're doing this deep dive in the first place. You've shared some sources about these land deals in Guyana, and we're trying to untangle this web of accusations together, understand what went down and what it all means. By the end of this, you'll have a much clearer picture of this whole situation.
Thanks for that. Now back to the jungle. So Nandlall claims that Hughes bought 75 acres of land in the Essequibo River area from some random individual. The price, a paltry 2 million Guyanese dollars.
That's shockingly low, even for undeveloped jungle land. What's the catch?
Well, the catch, as Nandlall revealed, is that the seller never actually had a lease for the land in the first place.
Wait, so Hughes, a lawyer no less, bought land from someone who didn't even own it. How is that even possible?
It's a head-scratcher, isn't it? Nandlall suggests that either Hughes was incredibly negligent or there's something fishy going on that we don't know about yet.
So Hughes essentially bought nothing. But then what happened?
Well, after allegedly purchasing this non-existent lease, Hughes then goes and applies for a lease from the government. And guess what? He actually gets a provisional lease in December 2019, again, after the no-confidence vote.
Hold up. So he buys a phantom lease and then somehow secures a real one from the government. This is starting to sound like a legal thriller.
It certainly got all the elements, doesn't it? And that, my friend, is where we'll leave things for now.
All right. Welcome back to our deep dive into these Guyanese land deals. We're picking up where we left off, right in the thick of it. Accusations flying, political maneuvering. And now we're going to zoom in on one location that seems to be at the heart of all this. Ogle. Expert, remind us why this place, Ogle, is such a hot spot for these controversial land deals.
Well, Ogle, it's strategically located, right, east coast of Demerara, close to Georgetown, the capital, makes it prime real estate, perfect for development, both residential and commercial.
Prime location equals big bucks, right? But there's another factor that's made Ogle even more attractive lately, hasn't there?
Oh, absolutely. ExxonMobil, they set up shop in Ogle, their headquarters right there, and bam! Instant increase in the area's value. It's like a magnet for investors. And as we're seeing, maybe not all of them are playing by the rules.
It's like they say, location, location, location. But in this case, it's more like location, location, ExxonMobil. No wonder there's so much fuss about these Ogle land deals.
You got it. And this is where those allegations of shady dealings get really murky. Remember that 30-acre plot Hughes was shouting about?
Yeah.
The one he claimed the PPP was practically giving away.
The one that was supposedly sold for a suspiciously low price. Yeah, I remember.
Right. Well, Nandlall came back swinging with evidence that it was actually Hughes's own party who set that price in the first place.
Talk about walking right into that one.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? But the thing is, the price tag isn't the only problem with these Ogle deals.
You're talking about the non-payment and the terrible surveying, right? I mean, come on. That's just ridiculous.
It really is. And Nandlall's accusations suggest it wasn't just incompetence, but maybe something more deliberate. Like maybe they were intentionally cutting corners or even trying to skirt the rules altogether.
Imagine buying land and finding out you can't even get to it because they messed up the surveying so badly.
Or that your neighbor got their land for free. The whole thing is a mess.
It just seems mind-boggling. These are valuable lands in a region that's changing so rapidly, you'd think they'd be more careful.
You would think so. And then there's the whole issue of timing. A lot of these transactions, including that one with Hughes's company, they happened after the no-confidence vote, when his party was essentially on their way out.
Right, that caretaker government thing. It makes you think, doesn't it? What are the rules when a government is in transition? What's ethical, what's not?
Absolutely. And Nandlall's point is that a caretaker government shouldn't be making these big decisions, especially about land. It's like they're trying to bind the hands of the incoming administration.
You've hit on a crucial point. It's not just about individual politicians and whether they did something wrong. This is about the system itself, the integrity of governance. especially in a place like Guyana, where oil wealth is suddenly changing everything.
Exactly. These land deals, no matter who's ultimately responsible, they expose the cracks in the system. And those cracks could become huge problems if they're not addressed.
Okay, so we've got this backdrop of questionable dealings in Ogle, and it's a microcosm of the bigger issues at play. But then Nandlall takes aim at Hughes personally, accuses him of profiting from these sweetheart deals. Refresh our memories about those specific allocations.
Sure. So one deal involved a 20-acre plot in Ogle, and the buyer, a company where Hughes was a director, they paid 26 million Guyanese dollars per acre. Remember that 30 million price that caused such a stir?
So he got a discount. Seems a little fishy, doesn't it? Like conflict of interest, maybe?
You can't help but wonder. And then there's that 10-acre plot in LBI, which is like prime residential real estate. That one was sold for a mere 10 million Guyanese dollars per acre.
And this was after Hughes's party lost the election, right?
Right after. Like they were trying to squeeze in one last deal before they were out the door.
It's all getting pretty murky. I can see how our listeners might be struggling to keep up with all this.
Yeah, it's complicated. But the takeaway here is that we've got allegations of questionable land deals happening in Ogle, with land being sold cheaply, sometimes not even paid for, and surveyed so badly it's practically useless. And then we've got accusations that Hughes himself benefited from these practices, maybe even abused his position to get those sweetheart deals.
It's a lot to take in. But there's one more piece of this puzzle, and it's perhaps the most bizarre of them all. This 75 acres of jungle deal.
Ah, yes. Buckle up, folks. This one's a doozy.
Okay, hit us with it. What's the story with this jungle land?
Well, Hughes claims he bought 75 acres of land in the Essequibo River area, and the price he paid, a measly 2 million Guyanese dollars.
Seriously, that's incredibly cheap, even for undeveloped land. There's got to be more to this story.
There is. You see, Nandlall alleges that the seller, the person Hughes bought the land from, never actually had a lease for it.
So Hughes, a lawyer, bought land that didn't even exist. I'm sorry, but how is that even possible?
It's a real head-scratcher. Nandlall suggests that either Hughes was incredibly negligent, or maybe there was some sort of backroom deal going on that we don't know about.
So Hughes basically bought nothing. Then what?
Well, after this alleged purchase, Hughes then applies for a lease from the government, and lo and behold, he gets a provisional lease in December 2019. After the no-confidence vote, might I add?
He buys a phantom lease and then secures a real one from the government. This is like something out of a movie.
It's wild, isn't it? So many questions. Was Hughes duped, or was this some calculated move? And if so, who was pulling the strings?
It seems like every time we think we've got a handle on this situation, another twist pops up. Expert, as we wrap up this segment, what are your initial thoughts on these Ogle and Essequibo River land deals?
Well, I think it underscores the importance of due diligence, especially with land transactions. And it raises serious concerns about conflicts of interest when those in positions of power are involved in these deals.
Couldn't agree more. It's a stark reminder that transparency and accountability are absolutely essential, especially in a country undergoing such significant economic and political changes as Guyana. Well, folks, we spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive really getting into the weeds of these land deals in Guyana. It's been a whirlwind of accusations and shady dealings, right? From sweetheart deals to phantom leases, we've seen it all.
It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? How much of this is just business as usual and how much is something more sinister?
Exactly. But before we get too lost in the details, I think it's time to step back and look at the bigger picture. What does all of this mean for Guyana? What are the implications of these land deals in the long run?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that goes beyond the immediate political back and forth. We have to remember that Guyana is on the cusp of a major economic shift thanks to those oil discoveries. They're about to be swimming in money, but that comes with its own set of challenges.
It's that whole thing, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And the power here is managing all that new wealth responsibly, ethically.
Exactly. And what we're seeing with these land deals, it could be a warning sign. It shows how vulnerable the system is, how it might not be ready to handle all that money and the pressure that comes with it.
So it's not just about who got which piece of land for how much. It's about making sure that Guyana's resources benefit all Guyanese, not just a select few.
You got it. These land deals raise some serious questions about transparency, accountability, the potential for corruption to undermine Guyana's future.
It's like they're building a house on a shaky foundation. Economic growth without good governance, it's a recipe for disaster. But let's shift gears a bit. We've talked a lot about the problems, but what about solutions? What can be done to prevent this kind of thing from happening again?
Well, for starters, they need to strengthen their institutions. That means making government operations more transparent, establishing clear rules for how land is allocated, and enforcing those anti-corruption laws, no exceptions.
So creating a level playing field where everyone plays by the same rules, no matter who they are or who they know.
Exactly. And it's also crucial to empower civil society to hold those in power accountable. A free press, watchdog groups, citizens who are engaged and informed. They can play a huge role in exposing corruption and pushing for reform.
It's about creating a culture where transparency is the norm, not the exception, where those in power understand that they answer to the people they serve.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Ultimately, it's about making sure that Guyana's newfound wealth translates into a better future for all its citizens, where opportunities are shared, resources are managed sustainably, and the rule of law prevails.
Well, this deep dive has certainly been an eye-opener, hasn't it? We've gone through a lot, uncovered a lot of questionable practices, and really highlighted just how important good governance is, especially in a country like Guyana that's on the verge of such massive change.
It has been a fascinating journey, and I hope our listeners have gained a better understanding of these complex issues and the crucial questions that need to be answered.
To our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge and the tools to engage in informed discussions about these issues. Remember, knowledge is power, and with power comes the responsibility to speak up, demand accountability, and advocate for a brighter future for Guyana. Until next time, keep asking those tough questions, folks.